Pretty much every automaker in the world is producing some form of electrified vehicles, and in this respect we've got Mazda's first. It's the MX-30. It's a compact crossover SUV. Now the car starts from £25,500 including the plug-in grant and goes up to £30,000 depending on the level trim that you go for. Now if you'd like a detailed breakdown between what you get between the little trim levels, do check out our full written review down in the description below. Also down there you'll find links to our social media platforms, so it gives you a chance of keeping up with the latest news and reviews from TotallyEV. And furthermore, if you're interested in keeping up with the reviews from the channel itself, definitely do subscribe if you haven't already and hit that bell notification so you can get notified each time a video goes live. So to kick things off, let's talk about the exterior design, and personally I really do like the front of the vehicle. It's got a very Mazda look to it. It's not only cute but also aggressive, given the fact that its headlights are a little bit indented into the overall chassis. However, the same couldn't be said of the side of the vehicle, whereby you've got pretty large plastic wheel arches and side skirts, and at the rear again you're treated with a pretty large plastic bumper. On the plus side, I really do like how the boot integrates with the taillights, and again, almost like the headlight design, the taillights give it a kind of swazzy type of look. Now moving inside the vehicle, I really do like what Mazda have achieved. It's got this premium feel and look to it, and also has got reminiscence to its past, whereby the manufacturers actually used recycled cork for the center console. It's just a really nice sort of touch, but also good sort of nod towards the eco credentials that the vehicle has. Now as for the steering wheel, it's very easy to handle. It's got a good weight to it, a size, and also it's relatively nimble, and we'll talk about its performance and handling characteristics further down in this review. On the steering wheel itself, on the left hand side you've got media controls, and on the right hand side you've got your cruise control settings. It's just all really intuitive. Behind it you've got flappy paddles, and again we'll talk about this in the performance segment, but effectively allows you to customize the regenerative braking levels. Now the instrument cluster is a 7-inch semi-digital / analog display. It gives you all the key information you want. There's very little customization, but truthfully, with a power indicator and charge indicator on the left hand side, speedometer in the middle, and also the level of battery that you've got, and furthermore the coolant level, is exactly what you're going to need when it comes to looking at it. Now what I really do like, and again I'm going to touch upon this later down in the review, is the fact that the manufacturer as standard integrates a heads-up display, which really does add to the overall safety credentials of the vehicle, and in comparison to other vehicles that you can find at this price tag, it's quite a rarity. Now moving on to the center of the dashboard, you've got an elongated 8.8-inch infotainment system. However, it's not got touch buttons, but that doesn't really matter because it's quite at an arm's reach. But through the infotainment system, you've got built-in navigation data, you've got all the car settings that you can tinker around with, and the menu system is just really well laid out. And it also integrates Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. Now moving down towards the center console, what you'll find is a touchscreen display for the climate controls. It's a 7-inch display to be specific. However, on the side of it you've also got the physical buttons, so you can choose whichever you wish. I feel that Mazda were caught in two minds over here by almost wanting to ditch all the physical controls like some other manufacturers have done, but yet have chosen to retain some of them because, well, people like myself will still prefer physical buttons. But do let me know in the comments below if you like a more modern take on it, or you prefer kind of the more old school approach where you've actually got physical knobs and buttons. Underneath the center console unit you've got two USB ports, and if you go for the more expensive trims, what you'll find is also a 3-pin socket, or if you live in other territories it'll be a different socket there, and here it will allow you to effectively, let's say, charge a laptop and get a little bit more power from it. Now going onto the center console, it's kind of propped up, which makes it quite handy because it's a good arm's reach, at least for me, who I've got a decent sized hands and arms, and I just feel it just works really well with the design of the vehicle. It might have been an idea to completely remove it, but nevertheless, that's Mazda's decision. I feel that the gear selector itself is very easy to operate. It allows you to essentially go between drive, neutral and reverse, as you might expect. Other than that, there's no other kind of customizations in terms of the drive mode that you're using. That will have to be done via the infotainment system. Now, speaking about the infotainment system, there is actually a volume, or should I say a control wheel, which essentially allows you to interact with the infotainment system. It's again very intuitive, very responsive, and I had no issues whatsoever. And I do also like that they've retained physical volume controls, and also they kind of double up as going previous or next in terms of your music, which makes for, well, interacting with your music just a little bit more intuitive if you don't want to resort to using the controls found on your steering wheel. Now, further down, you've got two cup holder spaces, which can also be concealed as well, and then you've got a little compartment within the armrest, which will be large enough for larger size purses or indeed wallets. On the subject of storage, you've got places by the front door, and you've got very small storage spaces by the rear of the cabin. And if you weren't to use the center seat, you can reveal an armrest, which also has two cup holder spaces. Now, as for boot capacity, you have got 366 litres with the seat up, and this extends up to 1,171 litres, including the underfloor storage space, which is very minimal with the seats down. Now, if you were to opt for the Bose sound system, you will essentially reduce a little bit of the storage space, but it's very minimal. It's a shame, however, that Mazda haven't utilised the front of the vehicle. Given it's an all-electric vehicle, one might have expected a little bit more optimization, potentially like front or frunk storage space. Unfortunately, that's not the case, and when you do look into the front segment of the vehicle, you'll feel that it's quite hollow, where you can almost see the mechanics, but it's not being covered up. And I've got no issues with that when it comes to a servicing point of view. However, when it comes to storage, I just wish it was potentially a little bit better optimized, where you would have had another space to potentially put your charging cables. Now, as for the sound system, it comes with an 8-speaker configuration, and if you were to opt for the GT Tech variant, you'll get a 12-speaker Bose system. As I mentioned, that will affect some of the boot's storage space. Now, in this respect, I am pretty impressed by the overall tonality and the overall sound that you get via the stock 8-speaker system. However, it does lack a little bit of grunt at the low end, and if you're an audiophile and you're wanting to have a little bit more excitement in the low end frequencies, you might be, well, forced in order to get the more premium variant of the MX-30 in order to utilize the Bose sound system, which does come with a dedicated subwoofer unit that can be found in the boot. Now, what I do like is the fact that through the infotainment system, even with the stock sound system, you've got a large array of customization when it comes to the EQ functions. It's quite rare to see a stock system with such amount of customization per frequency band, and it's just lovely that they've integrated it. And of course, if you don't want to use that, you don't have to. You can resort to more simplistic EQ functions or preset EQs, which have been set by Mazda. Now, on a more negative note, however, there is this fake engine sound that Mazda have integrated. Here is how it actually sounds. I find that personally quite odd. I'm not sure about you guys, let me know in the comment section below, but I just don't like the fact that it's been included. It's almost like they wanted this car to be a petrol car, but they made it an electric one and therefore integrated these fake engine sounds. It's not even like we're talking about a fake electric whooshing sound even, which some manufacturers integrate. Now, on the subject of odd inclusions, Mazda have integrated a suicide door design, which might be great for practicality. Specifically, if you're disabled, for example, it'll allow you easy access to in and out of the vehicle. However, when it comes to smaller sized families, it means that getting in and out the vehicle requires you to open the front door first. So even if you're sitting at the back, there's no means of you getting out without the front person getting out the vehicle first, opening their door and then opening up the latch in order to allow for rear occupants to get out of the car, which I feel is not very practical if you are doing, let's say, school runs. Furthermore, the actual size of the window at the back is quite small. It kind of, I'm not saying gives you cabin fever, but it reminds me of almost like being on a boat. It's just very small and therefore can affect visibility when it comes to parking if you're looking at this side on the window. Now, if you do manage to get at the rear of the vehicle, what you'll find is that headroom is actually pretty good. The same could be said for the front of the cabin. I'm just under 6 foot and I've got enough room. I think if those are under around 6'4", I think you won't have a problem fitting into the vehicle. However, the same couldn't be quite said about legroom, where it's a little bit limited, specifically when someone is sitting at the front, as you would expect, or let's say in terms of the driver's seat. Legroom is, well, a little bit cramped. And as for the actual seating position, my knees are a little bit propped up. I know I've got slightly longer legs for someone who's around 6 foot, but I still feel that I am a little bit unnaturally seated, and therefore for longer distance drives, at least if you can manage it in the MX-30, you'll feel that your hamstrings and quad muscles might get a little bit tired. On a more positive side, however, the seats are very comfortable. They're pretty cushiony soft, but also firm at the same time, so therefore you don't feel like you're wobbling around when you're going at speed. It also will seat up to 5 occupants, and as I mentioned before, you can also prop down the middle seat in order to reveal an armrest, which just makes it a little bit more comfortable for rear occupants. But how is the MX-30 when it comes to driving? Well, we're on country roads right now, and this is pretty much ideal for testing how the EV GVC Plus control works, and that's their stability and kind of vectoring control that Mazda claim the vehicle has. From my brief experience with it, what I will say is that the car handles well because it's quite lightweight in comparison to other all-electric or even plug-in hybrid models out there on the market, making for a little bit more, well, feels like you're a little bit more connected and you get a little bit more of a driver's feel. The problem, however, is that it's a front-wheel drive system only, and therefore if you're on country roads which are a little bit wet as we are right now, what you'll find is that you don't have that much confidence when going around at speed. Of course, if you're going more of a leisurely space like we are doing now, then you won't have any issues. However, I did find sometimes when I was just putting my foot down that the car would almost struggle for grip a little bit and just wobble around. The same could be said if you're flooring the car from 0 to 60 miles an hour, and there the car has a little bit of a wobble when it just first gets going. Of course, that could be due to the fact that we're on wet roads, but even on a little bit of a drier patch, I still found this to have the same sort of effect. Now, in terms of power that you get 107 kilowatts from the front mounted motor, and this delivers around 143 horsepower. You'll also get 271 Newton meters of torque, and from my tested 0 to 60 speeds with the RaceLogic V-Box Sport, I got a time of 8.87 seconds. Now, if you're not someone who's going to be chucking around country roads at speed or bothered about its straight line speed from a standstill, you're of course going to be interested about its electric range. And here Mazda has a 35.5 kilowatt hour battery pack which is installed, and that is claimed to run for around 127 miles on the WLTP test cycle. Now, from my experience, what I found is the car actually nets around 90 miles, and this is in mixed driving conditions, from driving on country roads at speed on motorway and going around slower city commutes. And this really isn't all that impressive. While the car is relatively inexpensive for an all-electric vehicle, you must consider that there are some other electric hatchbacks or even SUVs that truly would trump the MX-30 in its all-electric range. So in this respect, you'll be looking at comparing the Honda E and the Mini Electric to the Mazda MX-30, which isn't something that I would really say is an impressive thing to do. In comparison, you could look at the VW ID3, the Renault Zoe, you can look at the MG ZS EV. All of these cars are under £30,000 and offer significantly more range, or around the same price tag as well. So it just begs the question, why would you then get the MX-30 for its electric nature? Now, truthfully, I think that Mazda have tried and attempted to get an all-electric vehicle, and in this respect they haven't added a larger battery because they wanted to improve the driver's feel, very much like the same sort of philosophy as Honda and BMW, should I say Mini as well, because they're more concentrated on a driver's feel, and you can't really achieve that driver's feel when you have a larger battery pack, unless however you go for far more premium solutions such as the Polestar 2 or the Tesla, where you're paying a lot more money, but that's for a car that's a little bit well designed and much more advanced when it comes to its battery technology. Now, when it comes to recouping energy, this is also another point where I feel that Mazda are a little bit off the mark. You've got 4 levels of regenerative braking levels, and they can be accessed via the flappy paddles found on the steering wheel. Very simple enough to operate, and each time you step inside the car you'll have to do it because it defaults to the drive mode, which is the default one. Now, in its default mode there's a small amount of regenerative braking, and if you were to shift up, so to speak, on the right paddle, it will effectively eliminate all the regenerative braking. And if you're in an electric car, specifically in a car that has roughly 90 miles of range, what you'll want to do is try and recoup some energy back into the battery pack as much as possible. So by shifting on the left paddle, you increase the regenerative braking level, and in this respect gives you a little bit more of braking. Now, it doesn't quite come to a complete standstill fast enough for my liking. It will come to a standstill, so if you take off your foot off the accelerator and you give it enough space, it will come to a standstill. But I just wish it was just a little bit harsher, given the fact that we have 4 levels of regenerative braking over here. It would have been great if, well, it was pretty harsh, such as the Nissan Leaf, which is quite a harsh regenerative braking level and means that, well, effectively you can rely on driving on one pedal only, specifically with an inner city commute. Instead here you can drive on one pedal if you're on country roads or on the motorway and recoup energy as much as possible, but as soon as you go into inner city commutes you'll probably be resorting to the brake pedal as well. Now, of course, it's an electric vehicle, so you can of course plug it in as well. And here you've got a 50 kilowatt input via the CCS port. Now, this will net from 0 to 80% in roughly 36 minutes, and if you were to plug it on a 7 kilowatt charger, it'll take up to 5 hours. And why is it up to 5 hours? Well, that's because the input is limited to 6.6 kilowatts. So even though you're plugging it on a 7 kilowatt charger or 7.4, 7.7, or even a 3-phase 11 kilowatt, you'll be limited to 6.6 kilowatts of input when you're using the Type 2 input only. Now, what I really do like about the Mazda MX-30 is its safety systems, and there's a lot of them built in as standard on the base level model, which is the one that we're driving over here. You've got blind spot assist, which is nice. You've got a reversing camera, which makes it a little bit easier when you're parking, and you've got parking sensors as well. You've got cruise control, and you've also got a head-up display. Now, the head-up display is actually quite a rarity in most, well, cheaper EVs or even cheaper vehicles, no matter if they're all electric or not. And it's really lovely to see that Mazda has integrated it as standard, and furthermore integrates your map data, so you can actually see your road in front of you and not have to glance at the infotainment system, and furthermore gives you the speed that you're driving on and the safety systems that are enabled. And this makes driving the MX-30 a little bit more of a breeze rather than have to rely on your sensors. And of course, never give those up, because it's always handy to have them around. But what I'm trying to say over here is that as standard, it's nice to see that Mazda has integrated a whole host of different safety features. Now, this all really leads me on to my verdict. What do I make about the Mazda MX-30? Well, quite frankly, I think its design, aesthetics is fantastic. The interior, there's not too much to complain about when it comes to a design standpoint of view. However, I'm not too much of a fan of how the rear doors work, whereby if you do have children or people you're transporting, it'll be a little bit awkward for them to get out because you effectively have to open the front doors. Very much like the BMW i3, and that's something, again, I wasn't a fan of when I checked out the BMW i3. Elsewhere, when it comes to performance, it's not exactly the slowest, but neither is it the funnest car to drive. It does have this driver's feel, don't get me wrong, but fundamentally the biggest thing for me is its all-electric range, given that you are buying an all-electric vehicle after all. And at around 90 odd miles of range, I feel that it's not quite sufficient in comparison to what else you can find out there on the market, where some of its competitors, well, quite a few of its competitors, offer longer range, if not offer the same-ish price, and you're getting basically more car for your money. So that's just my thoughts and opinions on the Mazda MX-30. I'll be intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you make of the MX-30? Is it a car you can see yourself driving? Let us know in the comments. If you like this video, give it a like, subscribe to see more, and of course hit that bell notification if you want to keep up with the channel. And of course favourite and share if you feel that this video will be helpful to a family and friend trying to make an informed purchasing decision when it comes to electric vehicles. Alright, I've been Chris, take care of yourselves and goodbye.